והמצווה השלישim. He, שהזהירו מלכס בדרכי הכופרים. Ibn Tibbon basically says over here, בדרכי akum, but the Arabic word, the Pirush Miluli, is clearly about kofrim, and whether it's darkei hakofrim or ikves hakofrim, it basically means to follow them. Umisnaheg b'minagoseim. There's a law of going in the ways, whatever that means, of the kofrim, and to be noig like them, whatever that means. And then there's a new thing over here. Va'afilu b'babusheim v'kibutza b'tzibseim b'moshavom. And even in the clothes style and the places where they gather or sit, something like that. But just read it. Just each word is difficult to read. V'omo yis'aleh v'lo seilchu b'chukos hagoy asher ani mishalech mipneichem. See here, asher ani mishalech mipneichem, it seems to point to the Canaanim. Ukva nichla zoazu ubechukeiseim lo selechu. Here it might be more general. We have to evaluate that in the context of the psukim, and we'll see exactly which goyim, which kofim we're talking about. Uboa pirush, l'choyim means a pirush makubal, and it's a sifra. Lo yamalti el bechukim hachakukim lohem v'lavoseim. So it's those things which are both, and this is going to be a big problem, to them and their fathers. Okay. And we have, then he goes on to explain this idea of Moshe Boisam in the next Sifra, V'loshe Sifra, V'seim lo yiselechu, Tolchu b'nimois shelehem, b'dvar machakukim lehem, Gon teatros, b'kerkesios, v'asterios, it's places that they gathered. V'elu heim minei hamoishovim, those places that they gather in kapach etzulomim. Shohoyim miskapsin, but here he adds something. So the question is the problem of the theater per se. And here he seems to say shohoyim miskapsin behen la'avodas hatzlomim. Rabbi Meir oimer elu dalkei amorish imor chacham. So there's a different shot in what the chukim are. Rabbi Yehuda oimer shloi tinchu, we don't understand what that is. V'loi tegadat tzitzis. There's a type of haircut called kumi, which the back is left uncut and everything else is cut around. Everything else except for the back. But a priori, you ask questions, just get an idea of what's said here. A priori, you ask a question of whether there's a machlekes over here. So the Ram says very clearly there isn't. It's any of them. So it means there's no machlekes halacha. We take all positions. Then he does a very strange thing, which you also have to understand, because he said before that it was kefil. There's a law of loisechu b'chukas agoy, asher ani mishalech mipenechem, and b'chukasem loiselechu. Then for some reason, he doesn't put the next law together with this, but starts a new discussion. Why didn't he put it all together? Loshen Sifri, Shomer Beloisa Aser. Pen Beloisa Aser. So there's something odd going on here, but you see, it says alav twice. Shomer is alav, and pen is alav. Tinokesh achreim, shemetid bolehem, v'tasek k'maisei. Maybe you do like them, and you be like you do something like them, v'tasek k'maisei. V'yelecho lemoikesh. Will end up not to your best interest, like you're in a trap. Shalei toimo hovi and yoytze b'agomon, afani yoytze b'agomon. The question is, what are these tlusim? Who meaning izin aproshim? And here he doesn't say it's the type of armor or the type of way that the I guess the aristocrats or the army, the officers, whatever it is. But he doesn't mention here Avodah Zarah as he did by Meshava. We have to understand the difference, just to understand the words here. Ukfa Yodata Loshen Anovi in Tzfanya ve'al kol halev shimal b'shnochi. Zekuloi. Then he has a sentence which is a little bit odd. Zekuloi lisrachik mehen. So here you can imagine, we'll talk about this later, that this may not have anything to do with Avodah Zarah. And that's why the Ram keeps it separately. We'll talk about this a little bit more later. And even though it's nothing to do with Avodah Zarah, it's a separate discussion, that it's a how do you say, it's a hachoka deraisa from those things which might bring you to be like them, and then maybe you'll be over Avodah Zarah, something like that. But here, there might not be anything about Avodah Zarah in our Gomer and Tlusim. We'll see. It's a Shembli that. Then, in the final thing, it becomes even more stranger at the end, because he says, "Visparu mishpei mitzvazo b'shishi mishabes v'tesef the Shabbos." It's a shit that's in his Samar Zayin Aleph, and it tesef in Perek Zayin and Perek Ches. Gamke. So we'll have to discuss this also. But if you look in the Gemara in Shabbos in the 7th Perek, and it Toseftus in Shabbos in the 7th, excuse me, the Gemara in Shabbos in the 6th Perek in Samar in Perek Ches, what it's talking about there is basically Dake Ochis of B'chukasem Loiselechu are incorporated in the Talmud in a discussion about Dake Emuri, both in the Talmud and in Tisef. Okay, so Mitzvah will come back to it. But this is the outline of what the Ram says. And a priori, it seems very disjointed. We'll come and try to understand it line by line. Okay, that's what we have. So let's go back to the beginning. Mileches bedalke akefrim. We pointed out that's the literal translation. Ibn Tibbon says akum. We don't even know if it's real or it's from the senses, because akum really is not a word that the Ram might have used. Or if they call mazalos is used with the senses, then not to stay stam with the avodah zarah, because you wanted to limit it to worshiping the sun and the moon and the stars, which would exclude many goyim who worship other things. Now, l'chera, in the word akefrim, we're not talking about stam kfira, that a person might be an apikoris or but we're talking about avodah zarah, which is a peculiar type of kfira. It's not all kfira. And in Minyan HaKotze, it's very clear, because it says, Lo yisaselamet sholeches b'chukos oivdei avodah zarah, v'lo b'minhag. And the Protei Mitzvahs, he said also, Shaloi, and he just goes one after, because he has an indefinite pronoun reference when he's referring to the mitzvah of Telechu, and we'll see what it's referring to. Shaloi lichos bris li'ovdei avodah zarah. That's Lamed Gimel in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, and then in Lamed Vav, he says, Shaloi lidamois b'min hagoisam u'b'malbusham, but the minagoisam malbusham of the Avodah Zarah. So it's very clear in the places the Ram is talking about of the Avodah Zarah, that's kafir. Okay. Now, we'll pick this up also, Mitzvah Hashem, but just at least now we have a better understanding of the words. Now, the Rambam writes, whatever it is, kaifa ma'akum, he doesn't delineate any ummah per se. It's mashma any guy who is an Oived Avodah Zarah, that there's a problem of בחוקותיהם לא יסלחו. There's no limitation to any one nation or any number of nations. You get the impression like that in Mishnah Torah, even though it might not be fair, we'll see later, to quote Mishnah Torah. He says in Perigid Aleph, Halacha Aleph, Avodah Zarah, Ein Hochim, B'chukos Hagoy, Elo Yiyah Yisrael, Muvdo, Mehen B'mabusha, V'chula B'shar Maisav, V'chein Hu Oimer, V'avdu Min Amim. So it means any non-Jew. So it's certainly not limited to any specific nation. The chinuch sholeches b'chukei ho'amori v'hein chukas hagoyim shenema lo seichu b'chukas hagoy asher ani meshalech b'nechem. And it happens to say the Canaanim ani meshalech b'nechem, and the chinuch is very careful. V'hu hadin l'chol shar hagoyim. So it's very clear, both in the Ram and the Chinuch, we're not talking about any particular nation. However, in Yereim, it's very clear we're talking about peculiar nations. We're talking about Zayin Amim and Mitzrayim. And what comes out, Kimaise Eretz Mitzrayim, and Canaan. That's the Yisr. And the Ureim in Siman Shin Gimel the Fusyoshin Peches Loisasu Kimaaseim Buchukeseim Loiselecho. Ureis Melokecho Loiselech Buchusagoyim Sakamaseim Shel Shiva Umois Dichsiv Pashi El Mishpot Vyocha Esalamuri Viksiv Basrei Ksiv Basrei Loisasa Kamaseim Ksiv Pash Achrimais Kemais Eretz Mitzrayim Asher Yivshavte Bo Loisasu Kemais Eretz Canaan Asher maybe Eschem Shomo Loisasu Chusaleiselecho. So it's very clear we're talking about Canaan and Mitzrayim. It's not all Umas. It's a very specific limitation of what Umas we're talking about. So we'll have to see how this plays itself out. Are we talking about specific Umas? Or are we talking about any goy or any Oived Avodah Zarah? Now, just to add a new layer over here, it's very clear in Sefer HaMitzvos over here, and in the Minyan HaKotzer, and in the Protei Mitzvahs, we're talking about Oivdei Avodah Zarah. However, if you look at Mishnah Torah, you get the impression that the law might not have to do with Avodah Zarah B'chlal, but it's any non-Jew. And let me explore that a little bit. Here, it's Oivdei Avodah Zarah. In Mishnah Torah, in Perek Yud, in Hochin B'chukas Hagoy, it doesn't say Oivdei Avodah Zarah, Eliyu, and this next B'chulei, Eliya Yisrael moved over him. The Jew should be different than the Goy. B'sham Ma'asav, Kamoshu Muvdo Mehen B'Mado B'Deyoisav. V'chein Oime V'Abdel Eschem B'Ramim. Jews should be different. So l'chayra. The problem is that any non-Jew, it's a problem. It's a very different take than we have over here in Sefer HaMitzvos, that the problem is Avodah Zarah, but it's a question about Jew and non-Jew. And the truth is, this line is odd, but it's not really for us to say, because that's talking about God. What does it do with the law? What does it do with anything? How is it a right to anything? Okay, to say that. But that's the Shittas Ram Mishnah Torah, and how the Mishnah Torah squares with the Protei Mitzvahs when it seems that with the Zohar, I can't say I understand it. Because pure, you wouldn't want to have any differences or steers between Mishnah Torah and the Protei Mitzvahs, because l'chayr it's one chibur. Now, this a little bit of introduction. This was like, just to understand the words. Now, I just like to understand, what does this include? Is it anything that goyim do? Like, for example, the pasuk says, "Ki ato bo el haaretz asher Hashem Elokecha noisen l'cho, v'loisilmon la'asa is kitorvos kisarvos hagoyim oheim loyimotzi b'cho ma'avi b'noi ubitoi bo'esh kaisim ksom mo'inim menachesh mechashem b'choy v'chov shelo v'yidoini. There shall be kisov Hashem kol eila. Glal tovus eila Hashem elokecha moish al b'necha. Yemuela Hashem yoysh Hashem el moedim akleismim yishmo. V'ata lo kei nosan l'cha Hashem elokecha. This is the Dvom Yudches has Dvom Yudches. So the question is, all these various things, Moinen, Mechashev, Kleisev, Menachesh, Mechashev, Sholev Yidaini, Mecheretz all Chukas Goyim. So the besides this, and interesting to think about, is the Rambam has called Hilchos Avodah Zarah, even though we call it Hilchos Avodah Zarah, but that's not the full name. If you look here, Hilchos Avodah Zarah v'Chukos Hagoyim. Hilchos Avodah Zarah Chukos Hagoyim. So, if Chukos Hagoyim is just a peculiar law, it's a little bit odd that they should call the halachas Chukos Hagoyim. Even if you look at the Rambam from Perek Yud Aleph on, halacha Aleph ein hochem b'Chukos Hagoyim v'lo medamin lahem v'lo malbush v'lo b'seil ki yetze bohem chulei. Then halacha Gimel ein menachashin kigoyim. And in Kaisei Moinein, Koiver, he goes on and mentions all the various cases. Then, in Perek Yud Beis, Ein megalchin pasei loish kimo shehoyu oisin oiv the avodah zarah v'koim reyin. So the question is it basically the Isav Peyes and Hashchos Zokon derech koim avodah zarah hoye lahashchis konam? Is everything again k'servis kaka in Perek Yud Beis Halacha Yud Aleph? K'servis kaka mu'batera u'shisar abasov yemalim b'chol zeh yeminig hagoyim shegoyish min atzmo l'avodah zarah shelahen klema shu eved mocho lo u'mushim l'avodah zarah. So, a priori, in the Seder of the Rambam, you would have said that Hilchos Avodah Zarah is the first 10 Perakim, and the 11th to 12th Perek is Hilchos Chukos Hagoyim. So I ask you, so that means that you violate the law of Chukos Hagoyim also in all these things? But before you start, you should clear the Ram, you shouldn't make a mistake. Now I'll show you something. Yeah. If you remember, we had Matseva, and we had Evan Maskis, and Noitin Elon Etzel Mizbeach. So there, the Ram quotes it in Perek Vav. He doesn't quote it in Perek Yud Aleph Yud Beis. So the Rambam is basically, I think, trying to tell you that all these are basically Isa Avodah Zorah, because the Goyim use these things for the Avodah Zorah, and there's an Isa to use what the Goyim use for Avodah Zorah for Avodah Hashem, something like that. But it's nothing to do with Chukas HaGoy. Se a priori, from the Seder Rambam, you would have assumed that maybe in all these lavim of Kaisem Ksomim, Moine, Menachesh, Mechashev, Choyvachovesh, or Yedoni, maybe you violate two lavim every time you violate the lav of בחוקותיהם Leiselecho, and another lav of the peculiar lav by itself. But in that which we know as Chukas HaGoyim, you only violate one lav. And Adarab, you can ask a question. What does the Rambam mean when he's makdim? If you look here, all the following mitzvahs are Moinen, Koiseim, Menachesh, on, and the same thing in Mishnah Torah. He starts in Perek Yud Aleph, and he talks about the and then he has Menachesh, Moinen, Koiseim, whatever, goes for all the lavim. So what does it mean by making Avodah Zarah first? I mean, Chukas HaGoyim first. It means that everything is Chukas HaGoyim, or means no, just the opposite. Chukas HaGoyim is separate, and everything else is a separate lavim. You know, it's impossible to decide which one. The lashon that it calls it Hilchos Avodah Zarah for Chukas HaGoyim is very intriguing. The interesting thing is that you find something like this in the Sefer HaMitzvos of Rav Sadi Gaon. This is in the interesting. It's in Perek Chav Gimel, which is the Shah Chukei Seumos V'Ushleishim Shulases Psilim or Rishayno Isalases Psilim Muslamim. So here the website is the opposite, puts B'chuseim at the end. But listen to the lashon. This is on page 226. Hachukim halolu, afa pi shehem mixas chukei hazorim. Then there's a few words missing or something missing. Or ikrim שבהם, במפורסם שבהם, וכבר כולל כל מה שלא נספרש, וכבר כולל כל מה שלא נספרש, ואומרים, these are chukas hagoyim which will nisparish b'Torah, and they are chukas hagoyim shelo nisparish b'Torah. B'oimroi v'lo seichu v'chukas hagoy asher ani mishalech mipneichem ki es kol eile osu v'okutz bom. So there are two chukas. The whole parak of Chav Gimel are chukas or umis in general. And however, there's a specific law of those chukas which will only nisparish. Ukva kolo es kol es ma shelo nisparish v'omu lo yisrael b'chukas hagoy Hashem mishalech aleichem ki es kol eila osu v'okutz b'hem. So it means everything is chukas hagoyim, but they're chukas hagoyim which nisparish, which have separate lavim, and there are chukas hagoyim which don't nisparish, which is a peculiar lav. So maybe the Rambam is also like that, that everything is called chukas hagoyim. However, the peculiar lav of chukas hagoyim is only by those things shall nisparish b'Torah. But then, at the end of the Rav Sadi going, he throws something that completely confuses us. Because after he quotes the law, and this is what you would have concluded. There are those things, everything is chukas hagoyim. But the law of chukas hagoyim is kol ma shelo nisparish. But then he says something which completely confuses us. He says, "Ukenichush uksivas kameis ukedoima." So interesting. I'm not getting involved in the issue of writing amulets, not writing amulets. The Rav Sadi going says, "Oh, writing amulets. That's allowed." Because goyim write amulets. But it don't make no sense. Why does he add in nichush over here? Because the thrust of what he's saying before is saying that everything has a separate lav. And there's a peculiar lav of a notion is parish. But nichush doesn't is parish, no senachshu. So I push it to understand what he's saying. But the lines over here are very intriguing and really talk about this problem. What's important for us and is you can talk about chukas hagoyim in the broader sense to include everything, but you're talking about peculiar lav of you might say that it's only those things from this parsha b'Torah. And you see what would support that, because the Ram Shita is that there's Malchus. So in all these lavim of Leisenachashu, of Leisoinenu, where you do a mass, the Rams you get Malchus. Is it true you get two Malchus? Malchus for Leisoinenu, and Leisenachashu, and for we never find such a thing that are two Malchus. So I think, you can think about this, a very intriguing question. I would say that everything is called chukas hagoyim in the broader sense, as Absadi going says explicitly, but the law of Telechu is limited to those things which are not mafuish but keter. However, that's what I would have said. I found a very strange Bach, and I'll just share with you. I'm not sure if it's changed anything, but you should just be aware of it. It's a Bach in Yodei Sim Kufayin Ches. Sril Rabbeinu, the lav ze koilo hakol. The lav b'chukisayim. Af min hogam b'nimusim shalen she'ein olav yisum afuish b'teiro. So the means everything's included, but even that which is not mafuish b'teiro. So because Rabbeinu Tchilo also lechas b'chus hagoyim b'hodim meforish ve'ein tzorach loim b'shel elixir. Sheba mafuish yisum b'teiro shaleim nema lav b'chus hagoyim ela afilu minig shenogu v'zeh boro. So I'm not sure. At the beginning, it seems to be very clear that b'chukosayim is even the things shenesu b'teiro. But I'm not sure if that's what he actually means. Now, let's just go back to the Lashon. You get the impression here in the Rambam, HaMitzvos Shloshim, he she'izhilnu mileches b'dalkei ha'koifim u'misnayeg b'minhagei seim. Afilu mamash seim. So there's derech ha'koifim, dalkei ha'koifim, or ikvus ha'koifim, and there's minhageiim, and two separate things. It's all included under the law. And if you're going to use the Rambam and Mishnah Torah as a parallel structure in order to understand things, then basically you should include the minhagei goyim, which are nesa atasporis and malbusheim, the way they cut their hair and the way they dress. And then b'afilu malbusheim, it goes under umisnai minhagei, whatever that includes, plus malbusheim. So Rambam in Hilchos Avodah Zarah, Perek Yud Aleph, Halacha Aleph, ein hochem b'chukas hoivdei chukas hagoyim, v'lo medamen lohen. There's to be like them. Lo b'malbush, lo b'sal, ki eitz v'echnemo, lo seichu b'chukas hagoyim. There's chukais, which are the ikvos in the Darkei Avodah Zarah, and then there's malbush and the haircuts. Chukim, what chukim are? The Sefer, the Ram quotes Sefer. The chukish shechagi says b'chuzei l'selecho. B'nimusais shel b'dvorim hachakukim lohem, k'gon teatrios. It's part. It's a cultural norm. Hachakukim lohem, k'gon teatrios, v'kirkasios, and astrios. So then we're talking about over here, Midagoiseim is physical appearance. And then he includes that even clothes, which are not physically part of the person, but the hair is. And then at the beginning, there's cultural norms, I would say. Okay, that's what I would say. Maybe I'm wrong. But then it becomes odd. Because kibbutzehem b'moishvoisom means a teatrios, and that the Rambam seems to say it goes on malbusheim and the misnaig v'minogoisom. So it's very confusing what happened over here. But I would say then, see, I'm not sure if I would say the cultural norms are the way they act, and the places that the culture tells them to go to, or I'm not sure where that should fit in. It's very confusing. V'kibbutzehem b'moishvoisom, b'moishovom. Just if you remember, we were reading the Ram before, when he says, "V'elu hein mine amoishovim she miskapsim b'hen lavodah zara, lavodas hatzlomim." So if he puts it together with malbusheim, I would assume it's the malbush which they also use for lavodah zara. Okay, now so l'chayr v'kibbutzehem b'moishvoisom b'moishovom, the mashmos is the Isa is the Knisa in a Mokom Rochov Hamiyuah leKnisas Rabim. So it's getting together. However, in Mishnah Torah, the Rambam has a completely different take on this, and it's not getting together, but it's the building of these makoimos to get together, and not the entrance into them. Because the Rambam Perigid Aleph, because of the Zohar Loch Aleph, he says like this. Ein hochim b'chukos hagoyim v'lo medamin lahem lo yumalbush lo b'sal ki yitzben shenem lo sech b'chukos hagoyim v'nem b'chukosei lo yisalecha v'chulei v'lo yivne mekoimois kebinyin heicholois shel goyim kedei shelo yikontzu b'hen rabim k'mo shehein oisin. So it's talking about the binyanim, making it, not Very interesting thing. But then, and which is even more confusing, could be in a cholois in Franco shall avoid the zora. See, here is completely confusing because you get the impression Mishnah Torah we're talking about being like goyim, non-Jews, nothing to do with avoid zara. And here he ties it into avoid zara. So I must say, it's very confusing. See, the reason why it's confusing is Ram Mishnah Torah, it's mashma that the Isa is, you see, let's read it again from the beginning. It's just, I just want to tell you something here. Ein hochem b'chukas hagoyim perek yud aleph v'loch aleph v'lo medamar lahem v'lo malbish v'lo b'seir k'yotz ben v'chulei hakol inyan echad hu mazir shel yidmer lahen Elohiah Yisraeli muvdo mehen v'yadu b'babusha Moshe muvdo mehen v'mado madeyisa chenu oimer v'avdil eschen min oamim. So I'm just confusing what's this. He adds a right over here, Elohiah Yisrael muvdo mehen. And Lu Yitzur, he's not doing it to the goy. But on the other hand, he's not moved though from the goy. Does he violate the law? So I would have said yes, according to the Ram Mishnah Torah, because otherwise there's no discussion. It's not a Musa Shmuz. Elohiah Yisrael v'avdil. So what's he trying to say? Hakol b'yin echad mazeh shel yidmer lahem. Ella, what's Ella? Ella is to reinterpret the law. So, especially if the law is not to be moved from him, so you should need in heicholis avodah zarah. It's a little bit odd. So the question is, but how could it be bichlal the lav? You see, I was wondering, and I have an idea, and maybe it's absolutely nuts. We found in Asay Michlal Hein at the Shemei Lav that there could be from the fact you should do X, I mean you shouldn't do Y. We have it in Asay. Is the same thing in Lavim that Michlal Lav at the Shomei Hein, that in the Lav we see that you shouldn't do this, but you should do that, and there's a Chiv Abdullah from the East of this Damrislan. That's just wondering, how do you read the Rambam? What does all this mean? But on the other hand, if that's the pshat, and it would be very novel and interesting if it's true, what does the Rambam gain by adding v'chein hu oimer va'avdil eschem min ha'amim? Why does that tell you anything about the lav? If the Rambam is trying to tell you the lav includes anything which is mizdam, anything which is not Abdullah, so the quoting of Abdul Eschem doesn't have any, doesn't have any meaning. And the question is, what's he trying to say? The Ram's learning that since the Rabbanish is Mavdil B'nai Yisrael Mera'amdim, so B'nai Yisrael, since God has divided us from the nations of the world, so it's incumbent upon the Jew to divide himself also from the nations of the world. Well, it has to do with the Ashara. So it's very confusing. What is the Ram trying to say? What message is it? Is this part of this or it's something else that I can't say I'm clear about, but I think the issue is a clear issue. Now, next. And this now is a very intriguing statement. I have no idea how anyone interprets it. The Sifra in Achrei Mois, Lo yamalti el b'chukim hachakukim lohem v'la'avoseim. It's both to them and their fathers. So the mashmos is that the lav is only clear those things which are nogim behem l'deres. In other words, they do it generation after generation. And that you find in the Yireim, who say lo selechu in Shiur Gimel, the first Yoshin Peches, lo selechu afilu einan oivdes ela ma'aseim v'chukeiseim shehugu la'asris l'shem teir shalehem. Is here Torah aleim b'chom pirshu ma ha'ma'asim v'chukim shehugu la'asris l'shem teir shalehem. B'Shabbos in Perek Bama Isha Yotza, u'b'Tosefta the Shabbos moine kol ma shehoyis kabola biyodam hachomim shehoyu chukeiseim v'ein lohisav aleim v'einom misvara kim kabola. It's that what they actually did. It's eilu achukim lehem lavoisam. It's not stam what the goyim have to do now, but the goyim do this generation after generation. Lohem v'lavoseim. Lohem v'lavoseim. It's that's the word seem to say. And that's also the mashmos what the Ram quotes in the Sifra later. Elu dalke amori shemonu chachamim. It's very explicit, those things which the Amorim did and do. These are chakukim lahem v'lavoisam v'aseim. But interesting, the Ram quotes the Sifra, and this is the first thing that he quotes. There's no mention in Mishnah Torah that you need a Meseres to be b'chal chukas hagoyim, and there has to be generation after generation. There's no mention at all. So it's very odd that the Ram makes the Sifra the centerpiece over here in Sefer HaMitzvos, and it's not misyaches to it all. How can you machri against the Sifra? And according to the Rambam, it depends upon those things the goyim are knowing. And the Bach also takes that, it assumes that in Rambam, in Yodei Siman Kufayin Ches, that it depends upon what the Goyim actually do. But the Bach also doesn't discuss this Sifra. What's Achakukim Lehem B'Lavosayim? You have to interpret the Sifra. He writes, the Bach writes, the Uleim, Alma Mashbeish B'Shar Min Hogim Am Yuchod Ne'ev De Avodah the lesser Eloika Shekol Ma Shemiyuchod Lehem Tzorach Yisrael Yos Nivda Lehem Afal Pi She'eino Nizka B'Divrei Razal. Not like the Yereim. Ki Rabbeinu Zechonim Levocha Hiskil Advorim Shoyin Noegim Oid Avodah Zorah B'Yis Yom. They were interested in telling you what's Negei then. Buadin B'Chol Minigay V'Chodesh Is Chadshe B'Chol Zmanim V'Yos Nivda Mimin Hogam V'Chulei. So that's where the Bach goes, like the Rambam, and we don't know how it fits into Achakukim Lohem V'Lavoisam, unless you tell me this Vav is not a Vav HaMechaber, but it's a Vav HaMechalik. It's either one of the two. Elu lo amarti ela b'chukim achakukim lohem o lavoseim. But that also has problems, because then the Ram should say even those chukim which are not noig, which their fathers were noig, is also us. He doesn't mention that either. So that should we gain anything by saying that it's above a machal? So, l'cheira, if you learn it's above a mechaber, so l'cheira, lu yitzu, they were minhagav goyim many generations ago. They're not noig now. L'cheira, it's mutan ganzen. Eila b'chukim lahem v'lavoisem. So you need both. In Yereim, it's all you need is what they want to noeg l'cheira, and it becomes very confusing. But the pashtus is you need both. Let's evolve a mechalik. Because according to the Reim, everything depends on min hoge agoyim b'shas matan Torah. So I don't know what lehem v'lavoisam means, unless we're talking the point, vantage point of matan Torah, what they were knowing and their fathers were knowing at my time of matan Torah. The Bach deals with this issue, but says something which is very odd. That even if it's this battle, it's also still, but it's not also from Chukas Akum, it's something like Ma'asayin. I don't know what he means. Kufayin Ches says Bikomokoim, Mare, the Oisan Advor Mufroshim, Divrei Chachomim, Amufroshim, Divrei Chachomim, Be Perik Baba Isha, but they seft the Shabbos, Vies Makoimis, Av Bishaino de Belizora, Noegim, Nogo Achsho Bohem, Bemix Makoimis, also Yisrael Linig Bohem. Why? The kivet shekvar ho yekvu achayik zeh l'shem terishem l'shem v'zor nir k'moy delehem l'terosot. But nir k'moy l'terosot, it's an isa of b'chukisayim. It's not an isa of b'chukisayim. It's still also for a different reason. Darkei Tshuva, you can look at Yodei Siman Kufayin Chesed Kotten Hey, b'shem Minchas Chinuch, b'sif Kotten Tezayin, b'shem Yitzorchon. You can look at this, but it's a very interesting thing. You know, what is awesome? Is it that which they were noig, that they are noig? It's both, either. Mitzvah will pick up next week.